Well, welcome to our Bible session. I hope all is doing well. This is about provision and about how God sent food from heaven and took care of his people. That's the reason today we can truthfully say that we don't have to worry about things like that. If God will take care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, he certainly will take care of you and I. And we need to always remember that. So what we see here is God provides for his people in Exodus 16:4. Now we see here the story of manna from heaven as we take another look at it. We see the story in Exodus 16:4 through 18. And what we see is this unbelievable, miraculous type example of his divine provision and care for his people. This miraculous event occurred during the Israelites' journey through the wilderness after their exile from Egypt. You see, they were faced with hunger. They were faced with uncertainty, not knowing what was coming next. The Israelites experienced God's generosity and faithfulness firsthand. You see, they complained about no water, and he got them water twice. And then they complained about food, and it actually, every morning food would come down, and all they had to do was get it out. Then they didn't get meat, and he sent in the quails, and they complained about what was happening there, and kept saying, well, we could do better in Egypt. So it got to be a bad situation. But God always took care of his people just like he will for us today. So Exodus, the journey we're speaking of, the Israelites had escaped slavery in Egypt, guided by Moses under God's command. They were traveling this harsh and very unforgiving wilderness where resources were scarce. It was during this time that they began to grumble about the lack of food, reminiscing about the abundance that they had experienced back in Egypt, sort of like we want to go back, despite even the harshness of the enslavement that they had been under. God's promise and command in response to the people's cries, God declared to Moses in Exodus 16:4, he says, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions or not. You see, God's promise was not merely about substance, but also a test of obedience and faith. Would they trust him? Would they obey him and do what he said? And this was a test to show that. The Israelites were instructed to gather only enough for each day, except on the sixth day. They were not to work on the seventh. Remember, on the Sabbath, when they were to collect double the preparations for the Sabbath when no manna would fall. Now, the miracle of provision that fell from the sky, we see that God was true to his word. God provided manna, a fine, flaky substance, described like a like a coriander seed and tasting like wafers made with honey. And each morning the ground was covered with this heavenly bread. In heavenly bread, in Israel, the Israelites named it manna, which means, what is it? In Hebrew, reflecting their initial astonishment. Daily gathering instructions, and it was real simple. He said each person was to gather an omer, which is approximately 2 quarts per day. On the sixth day, they would gather twice as much to prepare for the Sabbath. So that would be 2 quarts, or 4 quarts, 2 for one day and 2 for the Sabbath day. And so any attempt to hoard manna resulted in spoilage, demonstrating the necessity of trust in God's provision. So the lesson of faith and obedience, you see the story of manna from heaven is rich with spiritual lessons all the way through it. And dependent on God, the Israelites learned to rely on God's daily provision, reinforcing their faith of his care and timing. And then obedience. Adhering to God's instructions was very critical for the people, as it was a test in the willingness and trust to follow his commands the way he had set it up and what he had told them. So we look at community and equality. The gathering of manna ensured that every family had exactly what they needed and the exact amount, promoting a sense of community and equality among the Israelites. So everybody got exact portion for each one. God told them what to get, and it would take care of that person for that day, and then of course the next day it would come down. Now on the day before the Sabbath, you would get twice as much that morning, and it wouldn't spoil. It would get you through the Sabbath until you got back to the first of the work days, and then you would get your normal amount again. So as we bring this to a conclusion, think about the account of manna from heaven serves as this timeless reminder of God's faithfulness and reminds us of the importance of trusting in his provisions. Like I said before, if he will take care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, he certainly will take care of you because you're his crown creation. So it illustrates the balance between divine generosity and human responsibility. What he was doing was encouraging believers to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and reliance on God in all circumstances. You see, it put them in a position where they would trust him for their daily bread, their daily food, and know that he was going to do it. Trust and understanding, knowing, waiting without questioning. So there was a lot there that tested the person, that made them understand that God will take care of us, but he'll do it in his time and his way. And we're not going to push him and cause him to do it. And if they went out and gathered more, whatever they gathered above what God had told them would never make it the next day. Now you think about on the day before the Sabbath, they would get enough for that day, which would be 2 for that day, and the Sabbath, which would be 2 more. But yet the ones for the Sabbath would last, and they would eat it, it wouldn't spoil. But if it was not the day before the Sabbath, if they got more than 2 for a person, it would spoil and go away. They understood that they needed to trust him, that it would be there the next morning. And if they took more than they should and got greedy, God was not going to let it work. Well, God bless, and I will see you next time. It'll be Saturday afternoon. Have a wonderful day.